Hey, welcome back to Alabama Tractor Pickers. It's only, I don't know, it's only about 104 degrees here today in Alabama. But what we're gonna do today, we're gonna work on this other 140 I got. This is actually the International 140 Industrial. And as you can see, this one's gonna need a little bit more work. The hood, the gas tank, it's off of it. No battery. And the distributor was already apart. It was just hanging here, the cap, and then the coil is actually hanging by the wires over here. I know you can't see it, but upon closer inspection, they've lost the screw because the points are missing. They've lost the screw that holds them to the backer plate in the distributor. But that's okay because I've got about 100 of those distributor screws where I bought a box of them. But of course, they're 200 miles away. So what I'm gonna do now is I made my own. I just had a regular truss head machine screw, the correct size, the correct thread pitch. I threaded a nut onto it all the way down, took some snips, cut the screw off to the right length. And when I thread this nut off, it should chase those threads enough to where that should screw into the backer plate and work perfect. So I did 2 of these. That way when I drop this one, I'll have a spare. So I've got 2 of those. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna mount the points. I'm gonna go ahead, since I know they had trouble here, I'm gonna go ahead and put points, condenser, rotor button, and then I may even change on this coil here because the coil's hanging. Who knows if it's good or not. It doesn't look new at all. So the goal is to get this thing going, not have any problem. To show you this cap, like I talked about on the other one, that other one should have had some kind of mark for number 1. A lot of them do, some don't, but this one does. If you can see this, and I'll turn my light back on, this one is an original International Harvester cap denoting the IH right there. And then if you'll look real closely, there's the number 1 marking for the number 1 spark plug post, which is there. So it'd be 1, 3, 4, 2 clockwise for the firing order. So I'm going to put this on. This cap just got a notch where it goes one certain place. We're going to put this on and see where that lands. And my distributor has the stud at the approximate between 3 and 4 o'clock position, which is approximately where it normally would be. And like I was saying before, number 1 cylinder landed right there. So it'd be 1, 3, 4, 2. Let's hook our wires up. Number 1. Number 3. Number 4. And then number 2. I put the ignition coil back in the bracket just loosely in case it's bad. The distributor all buttoned up. What I'm ready to do now is throw this battery in this tractor I stole out of the Farmall 140, and then hook up a little bit of a fuel supply here, and we're gonna see what she'll do. So I got some rubber hose here, some good fuel line. It's 5/16. And what we're gonna do, we can't get it on this, at least we probably could, but it would leak everywhere. Probably cause a fire and burn the whole thing down. I'm gonna either get some tubing cutters and cut this line in half so I can slide the rubber line on it. And then when we get ready to use it again, we could just couple it with a short piece of rubber and it'll give it a little flexibility. Well, the guys got a box of goodies right here. It came with the tractors. I'm not sure what we've got in here. I know I see some OEM parts boxes and some aftermarket parts boxes. So I'm gonna dig in here and see if we got anything good, maybe something we can use. Can't find my tubing cutters, so we gotta go to a plan B. Carburetor kit. A nice big mower deck belt. There's some rubber hose right there. That's too big, it's 3/8. Case New Holland parts. More Case New Holland parts. Oil seals. Ooh, new rotor button for a, is that a Ford? It's Ford. Oh, International Magneto. Perfect. Oh, look at here. They need that. That tells me something. Oh, what we got here. Well, right there is exactly what I need. It's just a little homemade hose barb for these carburetors, 5/16 end. Perfect. Couldn't be any better find. Snag this on. Yeah, that fits. Give some gas on this thing. Perfect spot. Don't you just love these new EPA compliant gas nozzles? Couldn't live without them. Oh boy, gotta get this thing. Oh no. Ah! Perfect. Gas everywhere. That's safe. All right, let's see if we've got fire. Let's see if this starter actually works. Make sure she's not in gear. Turn our key off. Oh yeah. Might want to check the oil. What do you guys think? You think this is going to be a good runner? Smoker? Knocker? What do you think? Well, the engine oil looks to be close to full. It's just a tad over, so I hope that doesn't mean a bad hydraulic pump, but it's just a tad over, so we're not going to worry about it right now. This is my favorite part here. Didn't even taste it. Oh, got a little leaker. Got a leaker. All right. Fire in the hole. Fire in the hole twice. Yeah, we better not choke it. That's going to be plenty of choke. Let's increase our throttle all the way so she can breathe. I'm afraid we don't have fire, guys. Now we've got gas. We'll hold it right there. Oh, she's hot. All the wires seem to be hooked up. Maybe it's got too much, maybe this carburetor's just, it doesn't seem to be leaking out of the bolt though. Well, let's, what you're seeing leaking is coming out of my fuel line here. So I don't see anything out of the bowl. I'm going to crack the bowl drain we're gonna see if we're getting anything out of it. Can't get it loose. Oh no, let's try it again. I'm not getting a thing. As bad as I hate to do it, I'm wanting to try to see if this could be the problem. And I think it is. These are hard to get ether down into these intakes. You usually have to take them off the carb. But sometimes you can load them up. Load them up and then regulate your hand on it while you're cranking. Let's see what happens. Got compression. I'm going to go ahead and say we've got a problem between the distributor and the plugs. I can't get it to even hit with ether or gas. So we're just going to have to go through from our distributor down to our plugs. Check for fire, see what the problem is. I haven't even pulled the plugs on this thing, so we don't know. Well, what do you know? We're back with a 140, and we're not getting fire, we're not getting plenty of gas or any gas. Really didn't have a good way to get that ether in there because I've done this enough to know that it just doesn't take when you put it through there. It's really hard to get it to go through the intake. So I'm gonna pull this distributor cap off. I've actually got a brand new set, custom made lightning hoses. We're gonna throw those on there. And while we're throwing parts at it, we might as well throw a new cap on it too. Got a brand new cap. I'm gonna take the old one off and look at it, but I had to have a new set of lightning hoses for one of these tractors because I was missing a coil wire. And since I just didn't want to get a coil wire, I just want to buy a whole new set. $12, you can't beat it. So we're gonna throw the new wires on it. Keep these old ones for a spare if we ever need any. May just go ahead and replace that cap too. So get busy. Well, I went ahead and popped those spark plugs out. Thought I'd roll it over on the number 1 cylinder, compression stroke, get it on top dead center, and just check our rotor position. When I popped them out, glad I did. We got a lot of different flavors here. We got some Champion D18Ys. Then we got one Autolite. It's an Autolite resistor 45. So, the D18Ys are decent plugs for these old farm-alls. I like the Autolite 386s. They just seem to run good on those. But nonetheless, we're just gonna act like we didn't see that. Make sure they're gapped. We're gonna roll on. Get my finger in this hole. Hopefully I can roll it over one-handed like I'm doing without this belt slipping. Yep, just as I said that. Dang it. too bad I don't have a cork I could put in this hole, because you can put a cork in there, go over there, hold the belt with one hand, roll the engine over until you hear it pop out, and then just continue to roll it to the top. But we're just gonna have to do our best here. All right, we're on pressure now. It looks like it's it. That's it right there. All right, you can see my rotor is pointing to the #1 tower. If you weren't used to doing this, you could take a white paint marker, a piece of soapstone or something, put a mark right there on the outside of the case. But you can see that plug. I'll take this scratch awl and I'll make a mark right there. Okay. I'm gonna get this stuff back in here. We're gonna put the wires and the cap on it and see what happens. All right, I cleaned the plugs lightly with a little start fluid and a wire brush. Lightly cleaned them, let them dry. Then I wired everything up, got a new cap on there. The old cap didn't look too good in the inside. So we've got all of that done. We're gonna see now. I could put an inline spark checker. I don't have it with me, so we're just gonna throw some fuel at it. Actually, what I'll do, I'll just use a little starting fluid at first. Let me show you the trick to getting to these things. You got to take the air cleaner off. And you're going to have a 3/8 drive ratchet with an extension, a 6-inch extension, and a 9/16 deep well socket. You could use a regular, I guess. I just use the deep. All right, so what you want to do, you want to get this body, this whole thing loose, because there's no way you're going to get in between this hose right here without doing that. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver to loosen that up. Kind of break that loose there. Then what you want to do is get your 9/16 socket, just like I thought, on these 2 bolts right here in the back. You may have to push down on the choke rod, but you can still get to them. You don't have to take it all the way off. Sometimes you can just loosen them and it'd be fine. Depends on the condition and the size of that hose. This was and remember, there's oil in this cup, or there should be, and you don't want to spill that out. But now you got access to your intake. So there's nothing left to do but try it, and let's see if she's got anything. All right, so our battery's hooked up. Shake hands with the shifter, it's in neutral. Move some tools out of the way. Let's see what she's got. Nothing. We just may have to get new plugs for this thing. No doubt about it. It's definitely going to be a on the spark side. It could be that we've got the wrong ignition coil. That coil could be throwing that spark and need an external resistor. I've seen that happen. I could have gotten a bad condenser. I know I've replaced it, but you know, could be bad. Well, there's only one thing to do, and that's get more parts. So we're gonna come back with a new set of plugs and an inline spark checker, and we'll see you next time. Well, a guy went and got some spark plugs, Autolite 386s. Well, I got them. We've got one. Well, this is a Massey Ferguson spark plug for a Massey Ferguson TO30 tractor. It is AGCO brand, part number 834-242M1, made in USA. AGCO, Duluth, Georgia. Nothing else on the box. Well, you open up this Massey Ferguson spark plug, and what does it say? Autolite 386. Identical to this plug. So guys, be careful what you're buying out there. You probably would pay $8, $10 for this plug compared to $3. So we're going to take these old plugs out and pop these 386s in, and we'll check the gap, just eyeball it. You never know when somebody drops a spark plug on the ground or whatever. Take these out. And I'm going to tell you, these old Champion D-Series plugs have such a big, fat porcelain end on them. These spark plug boots don't like to fit them, so these are going to fit better. All right, here's the moment of truth. Let's see what happens. What I did, I replaced all the spark plugs, and I found out, well, I assumed that my coil I was using should have had that external resistor. So I found an old external resistor in that box of goodies that came with the tractor, a really old one, and I just kind of rigged it up. So it's over there hanging by a wire, rigged up, but all we want to know is if that's going to get it running. Here we go. Fire in the hole. Try it again. Oh boy, major problems. Verified the rotor button is spinning. I'm gonna have to go get my electrical meter and see what kind of output we've got here. We could have a bad key switch for all I know. Guys, we've got a hot wire tractor. Never thought about stealing, I mean hot wiring a tractor to get it going. Let's see. Okay. Bypass the key. We've got something grounded out. Either my junction block stud that goes through the distributor is grounding out, or we've got a distributor problem. looks good. I'm wondering if we have a bad condenser out of the box. All right, here's another good way to check it so you can see if we've got any fire. Keys on. Guys, I think we've got a bad condenser. Honestly, it's my fault. I should have checked to see if I had spark at the points before going through anything else and throwing parts at it. That's the last thing you want to do is throw parts at it. Anyway, I've got my little screwdriver here. We could have a bad condenser right out of the box. I've got another condenser here. But I want to check to make sure I got that mounted and that condenser seated, because we had to make a homemade screw. And if it's not mounted solidly, that means that condenser's not grounding to the case. And I want to make sure everything is just solid in there and that we're going to get a good connection. I also brought my meter so I can actually test mine and see what kind of voltage we're getting. So, guys, if you haven't gotten you a Milwaukee headlight, rechargeable headlight, Milwaukee, it's a magnetic head, so it comes off, okay? Well, you can stick it anywhere you want to stick it, you know? So I can take this headlight, I can stick it right here on the side of the engine block against the hydraulic pipe. It's pointing right into the distributor. It's low profile. It's the handiest thing I've ever owned in my life. So do yourself a favor and go buy one, and you'll be glad you did. I checked the setting of the points. Checked all of that. Condenser is tight. I'm thinking I've got a bad condenser. So I'm going to get it out of there. You know, all condensers are pretty universal as long as they'll fit in the case. That one's long and skinny. I'm used to the short, fatter ones for internationals. That's just what's always came when you bought the parts. And I've got one of those here. As long as it will fit in the case, I hope. But if you look, you know, there's the difference. All it is a capacitor, so that one may not fit. Well, guys, I'm back with no more tools and no more parts than I had the last time. Try to get a new condenser. The two part stores that were near my house didn't have one. They had one across the river. I don't have time to waste to be driving all over town. I've only got about an hour to work on this thing before I have to go babysit. So anyway, I'm back. I've got my meter. I've got the old condenser that came out of it that was here dangling out of the distributor. We may try that thing. We'll check our connections with the meter. Actually, I can't find my ignition wrench. It's an 11/32 that fits that inside nut on the distributor terminal screw. I can't find that ignition wrench. And as you know, probably know, 11/32 wrenches, especially the compact ones, are really hard to find. Harbor Freight apparently doesn't make a set, so we need to talk to them about that. That's the guy's got to have a good set of those. Anyway, I'll order a new set. I may get the right angled ones this time. So I don't have that, but we're going to see what we can do with what we got. See if we can get this whole thing running. I did bring a file, a small file, to clean that screw up I made, that distributor screw. We're going to clean it up a little bit and make sure it threads in and out so smooth that we know it's seated. I don't think that was a problem. I just want to check it. But we'll check our connections and we'll just see if we can get somewhere. Well guys, it didn't take me long to find out what was going on. We've got a ground in our distributor terminal stud. Somewhere it's ground into the case. And if that's the case, no pun intended, if that's the case, then you'll never get fire because it's grounded out. And I checked it, and it didn't take me long to check it with my meter. Just do a simple, you ohm it out, simple test. We have continuity from one side of the stud to the other. Okay, that checks out. That means I've got the nut tight enough. It's making a connection. Well, if I touch the stud here on the outside, where my coil's hooked to, and I touch the distributor case, well, the case is grounded. It shouldn't be. This stud terminal should be isolated from this case. It has a special Bakelite plastic doodad that goes through here. It's basically an insulated isolator. Okay. Somehow we're getting a ground. If I touch it in here where my points are hooked up to that stud, I'm getting continuity between the points to the other side of the points, and I've got my breaker points open. That doesn't make sense. If I touch this side of the points and then touch the case, continuity there. So we've got a dead ground somewhere, and what I'm going to have to do to find it is pull the points out and then pull this terminal stud out along with that Bakelite isolator and inspect that. I'm suspecting we're going to have to get a new isolator, and I do have a good source for those. It's the Brillman Company. They sell parts for magnetos, distributors, wiring harnesses, anything you ever need. But these old distributors, you need to use what goes in it. I've seen a lot of homemade crap, doesn't work. So let's get this thing apart and see what's going on. Alright, so I got the distributor apart. I pulled out the terminal stud, which is a special stud. As you can see, it has a square neck about a quarter of the way in. That square neck seats into this piece of Bakelite plastic right here on this side. And then the other side has a rounded neck that goes into the distributor hole. So this one looks to be in excellent shape. It's a little dirty, but it looks really good. What we're going to do, I'm going to put it back. This stud looks fine. That slides up through there just like that, and see how that isolates. That way you have nothing touching the housing with this plastic here. So we're just going to put this back together, making sure we've got our little brass washers in there. And this one actually had, a lot of them are missing this piece of plastic. It goes on the outside to isolate any kind of terminal on your wiring. Well, I don't know if you can see it, guys, but I got the distributor all back together. I hooked my coil up, that big Blue Streak coil I just bought. I don't know if you can see it, but we've got smoke. So I think we just need to unhook everything and abort mission. I just want to look for any kind of obvious shorts or any kind of problems going on. And I can already see right off, you know, somebody's been in here on this wiring. Right here on the key switch, I don't know if you can see this, but we've got a naked wire just barely hanging on there at the crimp connector. What I'm going to do is, our ignition switch is corroded. The terminals on it are very loose that are soldered onto the back of the switch. We're going to get our meter and we're going to check that switch. I'm thinking that switch may be bad. All right, switch is working, but do you hear how it's intermittent? That's because of those terminals being loose like they are. So that means there lies our problem. Could be one of the problems. Could have more than one problem. So we're going to need to address that first. I could go ahead and hot wire it straight from the battery just to bypass that switch and see if it will run or get sparked to the points. So let's do that now. Okay, so I've got a hot wire hooked up, bypassing the switch. And I went ahead and put the old coil back on because the new one I bought takes an external resistor, and the external resistor I had was no good. So I put that old coil back on. We're gonna see what happens here. Look at there. We've got spark. So our main problem lied in the bad key switch that was intermittently connecting internally, and could have been also related to me putting a different coil on there with the bad ballast resistor. So let me button this up and we'll see if we can get her to run. Well, looky here. Our distributor stud is pointing 6 o'clock position all the way to the ground. Look at our points. All spun around there. That's all because someone who worked on it last left these distributor bolts loose. I had no idea, didn't think to check them until I was turning it over and after it already happened. I reset the points on this thing because I kind of felt like, is this thing jumping time or the points? Is something going on with the distributor? Well, got spark out of the points. Bypassed the switch, of course. I hot wired it, got spark out of the points. I just went to turn it over to make sure my points were open and closing. As soon as I did, that spun around and I had to stop the engine from turning to keep from snapping that wire off. So looks like we're in for pulling the distributor and the distributor housing. I want to pull the housing because I want to make sure all the timing marks line up on the cam gear and the governor gear. Once I do that, then we'll line up our distributor, of course, with the engine on top dead center on the compression stroke at number 1 piston. So, ran when parked, the classic phrase. Had a mechanic work on it apparently. Somebody messed it up. Got it all out of time. Lost the screws in the distributor, of course, and left the bolts loose, and this is what we find. So let's get busy, and hopefully she's going to run once again once we get it all straightened out. So we want to put the engine on top dead center. What you've got to do is you've got to find the compression stroke on the number 1 cylinder. The cylinders are marked on these Internationals. It's the same whether, as long as you have distributor ignition, it's a 4-cylinder gas. It's going to be the same on a model Farmall A, a B, a C, an H, and M. It's also the same on a Cub, a Super A, a Super C, a 100, 200, 140, 130, a 230. It's the same on a 300 utility, a 300 row crop, a 404, a 504,
a 424 utility. There's just several models that this applies to. The distributor's basically all the same. Take the same parts and they are timed the same way. So what you do is number 1, 2, 3, 4. This is number 1. Remove the spark plug for number 1. You could remove them all if you're doing a compression test, but just this one is all you need to remove for this, what we're doing here. Well, there we go, socket. Sometimes if you get a real thick socket, they'll stick in this head. I've got a thinner one that I use for this. I just don't have it with me. So what you want to do is you want to roll the engine over until you feel the compression pushing against your thumb. You could also use a cork to put in the hole, or just something that'll just sit there until it blows it out. Then you know you've got the compression stroke. I prefer to turn it over by hand or with a hand crank. Turning it over with the engine sometimes is just too fast, unless you've got 2 people and it's, you know, it's easier for you. If you can do it by hand by just sticking your finger in here. The only problem I'm running into is this belt is old and worn and it's slipping, so you have to hold the belt and then turn the engine. So I think what we're going to do this time is get a hand crank and use that. Okay, so what I meant by making sure all the marks are lined up with the governor and the cam gear and everything, we're not actually going to do that per se, because if we did, I'd have to pull the governor off over here on the front side, which would also make me have to pull the radiator off too, so I could actually see in there. But you'd have to pull this off to be able to see your cam gear and your timing gear, or your timing gear and your governor gear marks. But an easy way to do it is if you put your engine on top dead center on the compression stroke, this notch right here will point at the 2 o'clock and the 8 o'clock position. If it's not pointing there, then you know you've got problems. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put this engine on top dead center and we'll see where this thing's at. Oh, hey, when we're back on this 140 Industrial, I went ahead and got a new belt because the old one, well, it was just worn out. It wasn't gripping very well and it was about to break anyway. So I put a new fan belt on this old tractor. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go through the distributor, because someone had left it loose. I wanna start from square one, retime it, make sure everything's good to go. Okay, so let me show you what we've got going on here. The distributor was loose, bolted down to the engine block, but I have found an issue here that I think I can solve, that I really have caused. So if you look at the shaft here, I'm going to spin it. It just goes that far back and forth. It's like something's hitting and keeping it from going. Well, after a discussion with a friend of mine, you may know him or be familiar with him. He has a handle of Retro Crop on eBay, and he lives near me, and I was talking with him on the phone, and immediately he suggested, well, something's hitting that breaker plate behind your points of condenser back there where the flyweights are. And I had mentioned that, well, I had replaced that screw right there, and I made my own because I didn't have the correct length. Well, what's happened is most likely I didn't cut it off far enough, and it's just enough for it to catch and cause my distributor to lock up like that. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna remove everything, get it all out of there. I'm gonna take that screw out, and then we're going to check everything behind it, the flyweights and all. Just check it out, make sure everything's free. Put it back and replace that screw or cut it off even more. So let's get this distributor disassembled and we'll get back with you. My screw, like I was saying, was a little too long. It was this one where I put it there. I moved it to over here and also filed it down with a file. Went right in, and if you'll look closely, if you can tell, but I've got my point set right on 19 thousandths, between 18 and 20. That's where I like to put them. So if you'll watch, we'll show you that this thing spins over just fine. Points open and close. So we should be good to put this back in the tractor. This distributor, keep in mind, the gear looks good, everything looks really good. This distributor, keep in mind, you don't have to do anything to it while it's out. You don't have to time anything about this. So the points are set, that's all that matters. We're gonna sit it aside. I'm gonna pick up this housing here. What I mean when I was gonna time it to the governor gear and everything is I'm not gonna look at the governor gear because it's actually covered up in the block for the distributor housing. What I'm looking at is the back of the governor, which has a slot that this fits in. If we were gonna look at the timing gear and the governor gear and all on the engine, we would have to remove the governor at the front, remove the radiator and the fan and everything just to get in there and see it, to line up those dots. But everything I think is okay there. There's no evidence of that being taken apart. So what I'm gonna do though is I know that the governor on top dead center, #1 cylinder compression stroke, the governor indentation that this fits in should be pointing at 8 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So if that's at 8 o'clock and 2 o'clock, I know everything else should be right. And what we'll do is we will adjust this piece right here. I've looked at it, the gears look good in it. It's got some grease on it, so that's good. It doesn't have any side wear. It seems fine. But we'll adjust this to the 8 o'clock and 2 o'clock position, just like so, and slide it right on. Once we do that, then I will position my distributor, and I'll show you later how we time that to the engine, but you only do it when you put it on. So let's go ahead and reinstall this piece right here. Before we put this housing on, we do have to put it on top dead center on the compression stroke #1 piston. So a way to do this by yourself, I didn't even think of it until I talked to Joe Brewer. Just put the original spark plug back in it. And don't tighten it, just thread it maybe one time, just so it's sitting there, but it's not sealed. Turn the engine over by hand and listen for it to hiss. So sometimes it's better to have two heads than one because you'll think of things like that. Now, I should be able to do this with one hand because I have changed that belt and it should be getting a better grip. So let's try this and see how it works. Okay, I don't know if you heard it, but I just heard a hiss. So now I know that's on a compression stroke on the #1 cylinder. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my flashlight and a long skinny screwdriver. I'm we're going to look down in this cylinder. I'm going to turn the engine over and just kind of watch that piston. All right, now there it is. Top of the stroke is right there. Okay, stick your screwdriver in. There it is. So, real easy, extremely easy. Thank you, Joe Brewer, for that tip. If you haven't already, go check out his eBay store, Retro Crop on eBay. He has a lot of new old stock parts. He's got a lot of hard to find stuff for farmals, internationals, especially cultivating and planting tractors like these. He also has a lot of other stuff. It's just a real broad variety of things that he's got on there. And from time to time, he does fix a tractor and sell it. So anyway, back to this. I'm going to go ahead and mount this housing, get the plug in, then we'll be back with a distributor. Here's the moment of truth. I've got everything hooked up here. I've actually hooked up my temporary fuel tank up. I'm gonna go ahead and hot wire it because yes, I found that switch is bad. It's intermittent, so we can't trust it. So I'm just going to make a jumper wire here straight from the battery. It'll act as the key. We'll go ahead and juice that up. Here it goes. Got to be kidding me. Golly. I'm going to check the fire on this coil, see if it's actually doing anything. Tell me if you see something. Yep. She's fine. Honestly, this may be a coil that requires that external resistor, but I just don't know it because it's not marked. Points are firing. Points have got fire. New parts in the distributor, new cap, new plugs, new wires. I'm just wondering if that's the culprit. Well, it's warm. It's not hot, but it's warm. Let's change the coil out and see what happens. Okay, take 2, 1058. Got the coil here, put it on. This one's got the external ballast resistor, so basically it's bringing the points way down on voltage to get to a voltage that they can handle without burning out real quick. But that may have been our problem, was just a bad coil, even though we saw that it had fire. All right, here we go. We'll be pulling off the condenser now. Let's try this again for the 3078th time. Over there. All right, fire in the hole. You know, maybe I'm just overthinking this. We didn't try to see if it hit on ether. I had the fuel line hooked up to it and everything. Doesn't mean the carburetor's good. Could be plugged solid. So let's grab a can of ether if we can find one. See what it'll do, because you never know. But what did I do? Let's start with. Aha, here's a little bit, we don't have much. That tells me enough right there. I'm thinking this carb's plugged solid. I've got one I can throw on it. Let's do this one more time, see if we build oil pressure. Well, she runs. built oil pressure. That's a great thing. This carburetor though, it's gonna have to come off and be built. I've got one's freshly rebuilt. We'll put on it and I bet you this baby will run. Sounded like it was in time, so maybe it was a little advanced, but we'll get it dialed in. All right guys, we're gonna put this freshly rebuilt carburetor on the old 140 Industrial. This carburetor is a Zenith flavor. As you can see right there, because of the way it is. Zenith, made in the USA. If your carburetors say Bendix on them, well, this one does too. Zenith and Bendix were all one company, so if that's the only marking it has, it is a Zenith carburetor. This is going to be the aluminum body style. This carburetor has completely been gone through from top to bottom, bead blasted, cleaned. All flanges and machine surfaces are trued up. All your brass parts were cleaned and polished. A whole new kit put in it. New shaft bushings where needed. And jets properly sized. If you need to identify a carburetor on the Internationals, they have a brass tag just like so. It should have a part number on it, which is an R number. This one looks like it's got paint on it, but it's 38 something 608 R91. That's an International part number. It doesn't have any studs in it like the other carburetor does, but guys, just pull the nuts that hold it on to the manifold, pull them off, screw both nuts down on the same stud and double nut it using the jam nut principle. And you can back your studs right out and then reinstall them. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Put this carburetor on the tractor and see what we got. Well, the rebuilt carburetor's on. Through the magic of editing, I was able to cut you all out of it. Let's throw some gas to this thing and see if it'll fire off. Again, we'll adjust this distributor so that helps. Still got to clean our gas tank. This is great news. We've got this 140 Industrial running. It's been a bear. Fought me every step of the way. Even though some of it is not oversized, whatever you want to call it, I'm glad we got it. Thanks for watching.